Hello there, Michael here again. So in this video we're going to look at something called the marvel of the minor scale. So I did a previous video called the marvel of the major scale, and it's just my idea and my experience of learning music theory on the guitar for a practical way, because guitar is a very practical hands-on instrument. Now this is all the same concepts as that video but for minor keys, so if you will, it would be good to check out that video called The Marvel of the Major Scale, and I'll put the link in the description anyway so you can check it out. So to clarify, we're talking about the natural minor scale. A lot of us just call it the minor scale for short, but that's what we're talking about. We'll learn that scale pattern in a sec if you don't know it. The things you're going to derive from it are this. So you're going to learn the chords in the key, the notes that make up those chords, things called arpeggios and triads, and then from a lead guitar perspective, what certain notes to play over what certain chords when you're playing lead guitar. So I'm going to show you an A minor scale here, and I'm a 3 notes per strings guy. I've learned those most of my playing career. There are other ways you can play this scale, and if you know them already, that's cool. The same stuff applies anyway. So the notes in that scale are A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then you'd be back to A, and the pattern would continue up the rest of the scale pattern. So those are the notes A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So it's nice to remember this one, and it's very practical for the guitar. Now if you play those notes anywhere, you can come up with your own configurations for how to play the scale. So I might do 3 notes in one string and 4 in the next, like this. Actually 5, finishing on that A note again. So we're talking about the key of A minor here. And the chords in a minor key, any minor key for that matter, always follow the same pattern. So we start with a minor chord, then a diminished chord, major chord, minor, minor, major, major. Okay? Now I'll translate into practical playing what that means here for you. But any minor key you hear of, like C sharp minor, F sharp minor, all the chords in that key will follow that same pattern. Okay, you've just got to change the relative positions of what you're looking at, but it's always the same pattern in a minor key for the chords that make it up. So now that we know the notes in the scale, we're going to put that pattern of chords, the order in which they come, at each note in the scale, and let's see what all the chords work out to be. So the first chord in the key we'll put on the first note in the scale, and it's a minor chord in this case. So that's A minor. The second note in the scale is B, and then the chord type we're going to put on that is a diminished chord, which is going to be probably more rare for you, but for completeness I'm going to put this in. Sounds kind of spooky on its own, but it does have its uses. So just look at the diagrams I've given you there if you want to know that one. The third note in the scale is C, so we'll put the third chord on top of that, which is a major chord in this instance, C major. Then let's go to the next note in the scale. We'll go to the next string. So we've got a D note here. The type of chord we need is a minor chord, so D minor. Next note in the scale is E. The type of chord we need here is a minor, so it's E minor. Next note in the scale is F, and the type of chord we need is a major chord. So that's F major, and then we also need a major to finish. On the G note, this will be G major. And you can just go back to the first chord in the key to resolve. So now that we know the notes in the scale, we're going to discover that just those 7 notes build all the chords in the key. So there's going to be 7 chords in the key, and they're all built up of just different orders and different formations of those 7 notes. So the first chord in the key is A minor. You can do that as a bar chord, just an open chord. So let's discover what notes are in that chord by going through a certain pattern in the scale. So you're going to see something very repetitive as we go on. We're going to take the first note here in the scale, A. To find the notes in an A minor chord, we need to skip the next note in the scale. So pick a note, skip one, and then pick the next note. So A, skip B, go to C. Then we skip a note, D, and find our next target note, E. So with this little pattern here, pick a note, skip a note, pick a note, skip a note, pick a note, we've discovered the 3 notes that make up just a good old A minor chord. A, C, and D. Now let's see if that information checks out. Are those notes actually in that chord? Let's see. So we've got open A. This second fret of the D string turns out to be an E, which is good. So it's checking out so far. The second note of the G string happens to be an A. The first fret of the B string happens to be a C. So we've got A, C, and E in here. And then the high E string. So this information does check out. So this stuff works. So let's do that thing where we pick a note and skip a note to find the notes in a B diminished chord. So we've got B, skip the next note, but then we want this guy. So we've got D, skip this E note, we don't want that, but we do want this F. And it's got that spooky diminished sound now. Those 3 notes make up a B diminished chord. And I'll just give you a basic way to play that. Take that B note on your 6th string. Then we'll take that F note on the A string. And then we're just going to add the D note up here on the G string, fret 7. So you're blocking out the D string in this case. So for completeness, that would be how you'd play a B diminished chord. Okay, back to a very common chord, C major. So let's discover what notes make up a C major chord. So we've got C, miss that D, we don't want it, but we want this E. Miss that F, we don't want it, but we want this G. And we've just made a little C major chord there, which you will find if you try and check this information out, makes up a good old C chord. Hope you're following this so far, okay? So just remember, with the beauty of videos like this, you can watch it over and over again. Now, you'll notice in the diagrams I'm putting up, you can find all these other notes elsewhere in the scale pattern, so you can keep going up the scale and you'll find that you pick a note, miss a note, pick a note, skip a note. It always works out that way. Our next chord now is the 4th chord in the key that will be built from the 4th note in the key. That's D, so we're going to end up building a D minor chord. So pick a note, D, skip E, go to F, skip G, go to A. D, F, and A make up a D minor chord. Next chord in the key is built from the 5th note in the scale. This will be an E minor chord. So we want this E note. We don't want the F, but we do want our G note here. So we got E, G. We'll miss that next A but we want this B. So this is a bit of a bigger stretch here. E, G, B. Those notes make up an E minor chord. Next we've got the F chord, that's the 6th chord in the key. The notes that make up this chord are F, A and C. So let's find out how we do this with what we've been discovering. So the 6th note in the scale is there, F. So we want F. We don't want G, we'll miss that out, but we do want this A. Now we're going to skip this B that's over here, but go to this C note over here, so we get this little triad shape. And that makes up an F chord now. So we've got to the 7th note in the scale, which is a G note, and we're going to find out what notes make up a G major chord now. So we want G, missed this one, we don't want it, but we do want this, so it's B, G and B. Last note, it's a D. G, B and D make up a G major chord. So let me play through all that just with a simple strumming pattern. So we could also play the chords in the key as power chords, P-O-W-E-R, or 5 chords. So I'll just show you how that would work. So this is real good, handy, practical stuff to know for a guitar player. And I know from myself personally and teaching my students that when you discover these things, you feel more like a proper musician. You know, guitar is a great instrument because you don't have to know lots of theory to play it and enjoy it. But I know me personally, and probably you watching this, it certainly would be nice to know what you're talking about and what you're doing. So this will really help with that. Now, with all this information we learned about how to build the chords in the key, what we'll discover now is, I used that word triad, and that just means in this instance building a chord of 3 notes from that scale. So you take 3 notes in that scale, we're building a chord, and that's a triad. And what we'll find is they can be lots of different formations and shapes that you might not know yet. So we'll take a few examples to see how this checks out. So we'll take the A minor chord and see, is there different ways we can maybe discover how to play this just by knowing that it's made up of A, C and E. Can we find those 3 notes anywhere in the neck and build a little A minor chord? Well, the answer is yes. So let's see. Let's take that A note there on fret 7 of the A string. Then we have an A note on the 7th fret of the 4th string, so we've got E and A sorted. We need a C, so let's go over here to fret 5 of the G string, and we've just found what we need, A, C and E. Now they're in a slightly different order because the lowest note in the chord is E here, then we've got A, then we've got C. But that's okay, it's still just an A minor triad. So if you find those 3 notes anywhere in the neck and put them together, you've got yourself a little A minor chord. So let's finish up by finding one of the major chords. We're going to choose F, so I'm going to take this F here. So it's made up of F, A and C. So I know there's an A there and a C there from before. Now, do you see how close that is to the A minor we found? You're going to find there's lots of new cool ways to find chords and then find chords really close to them on the neck just by learning the 3 notes in those certain chords. So F, A, C. It's just another way to play an F chord. So the next thing to touch upon is arpeggios. Now, arpeggios and triads, I always tie them together in my head because they're very similar. So when you're playing lead guitar, let's say you're playing over the chords in this key, A minor, and you had an A minor playing, there's lots of things you could play over that. Anything in the scale will sound okay. But what you could look to do is play the chord tones of that chord with an arpeggio. And all those little things that you were doing earlier, like this, they're actually arpeggios. You're playing the root, sometimes what's called a flat third or a major third, and the 5th of the chord. If you don't know what that means, don't worry, but what it does mean in plain speaking is you're playing the notes that build the chord just over the top. And so on. So what this does is it gives you more specific things to target over certain chords. So over the A minor chord, outline an A minor arpeggio. Over the B diminished, outline a B diminished arpeggio, etc. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. So give the video a like and subscribe and all that. And I'll see you again soon.